Sort of naked up here today. Oftentimes people come by and they expect me to be demonstrating speedlights. Today I'm just going to talk about what we do and how we do it, and going to show some images from a couple of projects. One was in the air and one was on the ground. And I'm kind of pushing the edges of the possibilities of these small flash. And folks occasionally look at me and say, Joe, speedlights, why speedlights? Here's the deal, when people ask me, do you always use speedlights? Or do you always put your dome diffuser on? Or do you always shoot in RAW? Here's the thing, I'm a professional photographer. I can't subscribe to any dogma whatsoever. I become what the assignment needs me to become. So I use anything that's out there to help me. Could be small flash, could be big flash, could be available light. I don't care, right? Because I need to become what the job needs me to become to be successful for my client. Because I've been doing this now. I allowed myself the title of professional photographer in 1978. And since that time, I've paid the mortgage and put kids through school with nothing except what came through that lens, okay? And that's it. That's the tightrope that I've been on my entire life. So some jobs, I'm a psychiatrist. Some jobs, I'm a field marshal. Some jobs, I have to direct action all over the place. Other jobs, I have to just sit and be quiet and observe. I do whatever the job requires. But I do have kind of a fondness, I guess you would say, for these little lights. And the reason being was many years ago, my first cover story for the National Geographic was called The Sense of Sight. It ended up being 42 pages on a cover. And this was National Geographic back in full cry. National Geographic at the height of its powers. My contract to work for the National Geographic was for 26 weeks. 7 days a week, 26 weeks, out in the world, out in the field, by myself. I had a battered Halliburton case, a donkey bag, and a duffel of clothes. I was in Africa, the Indian subcontinent, China, north of the Arctic Circle, literally all over the globe, documenting this phenomenon we know as eyesight, and what goes right, what goes wrong. And I was in medical scenarios, and I realized I was going to have to light this thing all by myself. So let me ask a question. How many folks here use Ttl Speedlights? Anybody? Anybody not trust Ttl? Think ooh, scary technology. Well, I started my journey with these things. We're now at the SB 5000. I started my journey with the SB 24, okay? That was not dependable Ttl technology. If you want an undependable flash, go back to that era. I even go back further in terms of the realm of undependability. This is almost embarrassing to admit, but I started my career as a press photographer in New York City, pounding the streets for places like the AP, the UPI, New York Daily News, New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer. And I'm actually not ashamed to admit it. It's actually mildly humorous. I covered Studio 54. Is anybody here old enough to remember Studio 54? Halston and Warhol and all those people. And I'm out there flash on camera using a Vivitar 283 on yellow mode. Does anybody remember a Vivitar 283 on yellow mode? Now that defines undependability. Okay, so now we've fast forwarded into this realm of incredible technology. Could I just mention to the guys in the back, it's still saying 30 out here, so I have no idea where I am right now. Just let me know. Awesome. Those fellas in the back, Anyway, we have this amazing technology now, and it's nothing short of remarkable. That's why when I teach at schools and something like that now, some young photographers look at me and say, well, I'm having a problem with this, D5. I'm like, seriously? Seriously, Come on. This thing is this Ferrari. It's a race car with a lens on it, So I've been asked on numerous occasions to kind of take this technology as the camera relates to the speedlight and push it a little bit. So I'm going to show you a couple of those projects. One was in the air. It was a project we dubbed at our studio Impossible Flash. Nikon kind of mandated me, said, Joe, take the flash to another level. All right. There we go. That's one of the finished pictures, okay? So that's shooting air to air over the New York City harbor, TTL control from about 200 feet, 3 helicopters in the air, and a stunt woman, a trained television movie type of person who is used to doing all sorts of crazy stuff out there on the skids of the helicopter. At dusk, over New York. All right. We use Fly Nye on Air, which is a wonderful helicopter outfit in New York I fly with all the time. And there you can see the beginnings of the rig. I've got a little video here that'll just explain some of the technique involved in this. First of all, what's the very first thing when you have somebody on a skid on a helicopter and over New York Harbor? What's your first concern? Safety, right? Something falling out of the helicopter, okay? So everything in here is wired and clamped and taped. These are little Speedlight 2 boxes with grids on them that collect the light and punch it in a good direction. These are all super clamped and magic armed, all of this stuff in here, and then zip tied, and then taped. And then we tug on it, and we push it, and we pull it to make sure that nothing's gonna fly out of that helicopter. I've done some pretty nutty things in helicopters. That's always been my one worry. Back in the day, I think I learned this lesson on my very first helicopter flight. I flew with a wonderful photographer named Jimmy McGrath at the New York Daily News. I was a copy boy at the New York Daily News. He said, "Hey kid, you want to go flying?" I said, "Yeah," you know. And we flew over Queens on opening day of the Jets at Shea Stadium and closing day of the US Open at Arthur Ashe Stadium. So in other words, Queens was a parking lot. And he's got his camera out in the slipstream, and the Potomac head flies off of it. And he looked around at me, he goes, "We better get out of here." So I think there might be, blessedly, nobody got hurt, there might be a house in Queens with a piece of a camera stuck in the roof. I'm not sure after all these years. But anyway, everything is tied up, everything is locked down, and here's a little video, really short, about the background of this. Hi, I'm Joe McNally, Nikon Ambassador. I'm here with the folks at Hangar 95, and we're going to be flying over one of the most amazing places on Earth, New York City. We have this helicopter lit with the latest in Nikon technology, the SB5000 radio TTL flashes. I'm going to be triggering them from another helicopter, with the backdrop being New York City. Let me show you how we're going to do that. This is the basic lighting grid. We're rigging the helicopter effectively but minimally, okay? 2 flashes constitute our main light. Our model is going to be outside the helicopter, standing on a skid, looking towards these lights. They're fitted with Ttl Speedlight 2 boxes that have grids on them, so you control the flow of light and don't have it spill all over the helicopter. So everything up here has got to be really controlled. There's a couple other lights in here that are accenting certain areas of the helicopter. Let me show you those. Now this light here is gelled red. It's washing forward and bouncing into like a little bit of a fillboard that we created with gaffer tape on the floor of the helicopter. These lights are gelled slightly warm. This one's full-blown red, trying to simulate the idea of possible instrumentation lighting. It has no shaper on it. It's just a little pop, and the happy accident, if you will, is that it washed backwards and sort of lit the back of the helicopter, so we had definition throughout the cab. Just the one light is doing that for us. Really lucky with the placement of it. So you have to light the pilot, but you have to light the pilot in a way that doesn't interfere with the operation of the aircraft. So we found a strut over here, put a clamp on it, and a grid, and a warming gel. This is another group. I'm controlling all these groups of lights from my helicopter, which is 75 to 125 feet away, via the WRR-10, which is the transceiver that speaks to each of these lights. I'm able to tell them a power level that looks good back at camera. So the helicopter is rigged. Super excited. We're about to go in the air. Our model is going to be on the skids. She's going to be lit with SB5000s. I'll be in another helicopter. Now we're just looking at light and waiting for the sun to go down a little bit, and it should be an amazing night in the air. All right, so then we went flying. I'm also happy to entertain questions if anybody is up for it or has questions about how we put this together or the course of this evening's extravaganza over New York here. You know, stunt people are amazing. I've worked with a bunch of them in my career. See how casually she's just standing on that skid? You know, it's like a day at the beach, another day at the office. And the pilots were amazing. I have to have hats off to them. They controlled the choppers because every chopper creates its own downdraft, its own set of turbulence, right? And they have to be very careful managing that. Andrew Tomasino, who's in the back of the room, shot the BTS. That's his picture. He's in a third helicopter over New York. So we're kind of doing a dance up there with three of these beasts kind of moving around the harbor. I was blessed over the fact that, you know, here's little things that kind of affect your shoot that you can never understand. I wanted to get closer to New York, but ever since Donald Trump is president, there's the possibility that he could be back in the city and his wife could be there, etc., driving the helicopter folks in New York kind of nuts because there is a bubble over Manhattan that you cannot no longer fly into. But it actually worked to our advantage because it had to push us down into the harbor, and radio reception actually picks up a little bit when you're over a body of water. So these are happy accidents, things you can never predict when you are planning a job like this. Okay, so a little bit of wide shot. I'm using mostly 70 to 200, occasionally a 300 f4. Occasionally I use the gyro, but to be honest, in helicopters, I tend to not use a gyro. To me, it's just a lot of extra weight that I don't need. I've worked really hard at holding cameras at slow shutter speeds. That's another picture from Andrew. Andrew shot these with a D5 in the neighborhood of ISO 10,000, 12,000. This is a whole new world in terms of the technology. Try to shoot this back in the day on film. I'm looking at Deanne Fitzmaurice over here. And the lovely presentation she made earlier, a lot of black and white, etc., and stuff that was done back in this day, and now you flip forward and think, wow, if I had this technology back then, good Lord, what could we do with it? So we worked with her, and she's absolutely wonderful. She's been in a lot of television stuff. She is fearless, as you can see. She is tethered. She's got a small tether that bolts her into the helicopter. There's the red gel in the background there. There's the key light on the pilot. And I needed to have control over these units because you can't just fix the light at a certain value because what's happening to your ambient levels? They're falling like a stone. So you have to keep playing with your ratios, because as the outside light drops, the interior cab starts to look brighter and brighter, and you have to dim that. So this is where TTL control, for me, was absolutely essential. And it's remarkable because he would circle out to a distance of maybe 500, 600 feet, and then I would just keep triggering my camera, and as he drifted in, I would start to pick him up literally about 300 feet. I'd start to see the flashes going off in the cab of his helicopter. And there's a close-up or a closer look with a 300 f4. And this was a wing and a prayer over the Brooklyn Bridge. This is nighttime over New York. I'm shooting handheld, a 70 to 200, and I think this shot was done at a 15th or an 1/8 of a second. Lucky shot, lucky shot. I had a lot, I'll be totally honest, I'm always honest about this stuff. I had a ton of out of focus stuff, you know, because you're up there, you're bouncing, right? But the trick of this, like if anybody's in a helicopter, shoot a lot. Right? I couldn't shoot consecutive high because I'm liaisoning with flashes, but when I'm up there in a chopper, I tend to go as fast as I possibly can go. I tuck in, I wrap myself around the camera, I actually use my considerable bulk as a buffer for the camera. That, in addition to the VR, is helpful. Okay, but this is a very lucky picture that we ended up, it was the last shot of the night, and this is Brooklyn over in here, and the Brooklyn Bridge sweeping behind our two subjects here in the helicopter. All right. Down on the ground. Nikon mandated me, and the beautiful thing about the current radio technology that we have is that it liaisons very easily with the older technology, the line of sight stuff. So you can mesh the system. So they said, you have to come up with a picture that shows how the radio stuff works with the line of sight stuff. All right, All right, so you know, water is essential. Ever wonder in the movies why everything looks so glistening? That's because the water truck just went through. So this is our very, very low-tech version of a movie water truck. And there's our model on the ground. Very fierce lady, you know, expert in karate, expert in stunts, pretty remarkable. Those lights in the chopper are driven by radio. These down here on the ground are driven by line of sight. So you have an ABC group on the floor near the camera, triggering line of sight, and everything else up top in the helicopter is being run on radio on a different channel. There's our brain trust. These are not easy things to do. Lynn Del Mastro, who's right here, is our studio manager and our longtime producer. She can pull a rabbit out of just about any hat I throw at her. And she's gotten me an elephant in the desert, a 40-ton crane in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and she lives in active fear of my imagination, you know? And then, of course, there's the crew trying to hang on to the light shapers in the middle of a helicopter downwash. Nothing is easy out there. But we ended up coming up with a photograph that, actually, I think it's on the wall in the background here, and Nikon was overall pleased with our effort. So thanks to them for creating this opportunity to really experiment. Here's the thing, it is experimentation. Anytime you go out there, you know, you say yes, and I do say yes a lot. I say yes anytime anybody asks, you want to go shoot some pictures? Yes, yes, you know. But once you say yes, it's on you, you know. It's on your shoulders. You got to pull through on this, absolutely. Before I move on, anybody got any quick questions or anything like that? We good? All right. Down on the ground. Okay. Years ago, I did a street scene for Nikon because the big deal back then was the Nikon SB26. It was the first flash they made with an incorporated slave eye. And they said, take this and make people believe it works, you know, use a bunch of them. I said, fine, okay. You know, I said yes, again, you know. And that older photograph, you know, kind of hung around for a little bit. They asked me to re-up that now in the realm of radio technology. This is a street in Tarrytown, New York, tiny little place along the Hudson River, and that's what we turned it into, okay? That's 32 flashes, okay? Some are line of sight, 18 are driven by radio control. Numbnuts here thought, oh, I'll just go out there, I'll trigger all these things with radio. Then I read the manual. This, of course, was after I said yes. So then you have to figure it out, right? In the manual, it states quite clearly that in the radio bandwidth, you can only manage 18 of these. So I had to figure out strategically how to place 18 of the radio units so they would trigger all the other units. That was the kind of the jigsaw puzzle aspect of doing something like this, which was fun. Call me strange, call me weird. I enjoy solving a problem. For about 25 years, I was a National Geographic problem solver. They threw me stories that nobody else wanted to do. The human brain, telescopes, things like that. I was more than happy to get the work. Yes? The lady in the window over on the far left? This here? Yep, that's flash. Up in there, that's flash. This lady is lit with flash. Those are all radio units inside the building. So you start. What? You borrow every damn SB Speedlight you could possibly lay your hands on. Okay, that's step one. All right? And that's Callie, our crew chief, who's organizing things, numbering things, getting everything ready. When you're doing a production like this, here's the thing. About a production like this involves what? The Village of Tarrytown Local Board, the police department. We had to reroute traffic. We had to organize our date of shooting in very late August prior to the schools opening because they didn't want to authorize us to reroute traffic when the school buses were running. I mean, so much stuff impacts you as a photographer. You have no idea the layers of permission, the insurance, the permitting. I don't want to be Lynn, in short. Lynn weathers this storm, and she's amazing at it. So what I did was I took the scouting photograph and I made a grid or a drawing or a rough sketch or some sort of, I don't know, lunatic idea of where we could go, just a rough idea where to start placing these flashes. Then, what we did was, we had, the beautiful thing about working for so long as a photographer as I have, is that you build community, okay, around you. Every year we have a feast at the end of the year. Our studio has a feast for the family and friends of the studio, and we celebrate having survived another year of freelance photography. And so we have built community over the years. So most of these folks, the actors and actresses, if you will, in this photograph, have been in pictures with us before over the years. And we've always prided ourselves on treating talent well. And they were more than happy to come back and help us with this. So it was a wonderful day. It was like a reunion out there on the streets of Tarrytown. So everybody had their position. And that's Nick getting made up. We had 2 trailers. We had 19 talent. So we had 2 trailers. We had 4 makeup artists. Okay? Nick, Peter Nicky. He's an extra. If you look at the John Wick movies, he's one of the bad guys in the background. He's a wonderful guy to work with. Okay? And then there's me trying to rig a boom. And then the awnings proved a bit transparent. So we bought lots of white boards and slipped them into the bases of the awnings. So we made the awnings into giant fill boards. There's Andrew, right there, climbing up on the bar, hiding a light behind a flat panel. That is Mike Grippy and Linda from our studio, trying to place lights in the ice cream shop. Yeah, where are you going to put your SB units? Right there with the toilet paper. There you go. That's where they go, right there. Yep. Just above the Tostitos. Okay? There's me striving to look like I know what I'm doing. Okay? Yes, of course you'll put the light there. And this has Lindsay Silverman's picture of me. I'm trying to look confident at the camera while you're doing a shot like this. You are literally sick to your stomach all day long, right? Okay? Because the light is closing down. Things are happening. The sun is moving. You're closing down a street. You're inconveniencing an entire town, right? And that's my amazing wife, Annie Cahill, who did all the BTS stuff that you're seeing right now and handles our social media and marketing. Kent Miller, who's a wonderful photographer I've known for many years, he was in the picture with his bike. Callie, our crew chief, that's his father. Former Army drill instructor, sergeant, and longtime career as a correctional officer. We felt like with Callie's dad on the set, we really didn't need security. Windows had to be dealt with. Again, striving to look like I'm in charge, nearly knowing what I'm doing. There's our friendly police officer. He was great. Absolutely wonderful. People are in place. You can see now it's coming to crunch time. I wanted a little bit of ambient light to kind of play into the picture. So now we are getting down to it, and I'm still not really ready. This is where everything starts to accelerate. Started to work it out, ended up with this. Just going through this. These are friends of the studio. These folks have been with us before. Phil up here is a former Yonkers police officer who works with our studio on a regular basis. And basically, at the end of the day, we came up with a picture that had that kind of street, that kind of hometown feel that I was looking for, on the edge of dusk. Everything here is, there's virtually no white light in this picture. Everything here is gelled warm or red, on certain occasions, green in the background here. This, Andrew again doing double duty. That's Andrew right in there. Flash inside here, up in here. Now when you look at this, permits and permissions and payments have to be made to every single storefront, every single apartment. But here's the thing, and Deanne emphasized this before, when you run into people in the course of doing a photograph, they can turn out to be some of the nicest, most wonderful people you ever meet. So this gentleman owns that apartment. And he said, my dog is really fantastic. And I said, you're in, you're in. So there's him and his pooch. Callie's dad, Kent, This lady is part of the family that owns this store. She was a last-minute addition. We brought in the flowers, okay? There's Nick, giving his classic tough guy look. So this is like putting together a puzzle with light. That's essentially what you're doing here. And if you ever encounter a situation where you think like, oh my God, this is beyond my knowledge, this is beyond where I want to go, here's the thing. Think of it as building blocks. Think of yourself as a kid, a 3-year-old in a sandbox, and you've got your building blocks, and one goes on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. Take it in pieces. Solve the big problems, then move on to the small ones. In this type of a situation, what I call the luxury items are the most important touches. A little bit of extra light here. Like for instance, when we got finally done, this was black. I didn't have a light back there. And I thought it would look great if that was a super green fluorescent light. So we scrambled and we threw another light in there and made it trigger. Little things actually add up to very big things when you're on location. All right, I promised myself I'd save like a couple of minutes for questions. Does anybody have any? Do they want to question my sanity? Yes. You're going to have to shout, sir. Why didn't I read the manual? Because I'm a photographer. Dude, that's an easy one to answer. No, I actually do read the manuals occasionally, you know? I kind of gut my way to a solution, but this was quite clear. This was a classic mistake on my part, where I actually thought that I could expand throughout this entire range of speedlights and control them with radio. There are definitive limits to bandwidth, as opposed to the older line of sight technology, which there are no limitations. If they see it, they'll trigger. I've triggered, in line of sight, I've triggered over 100 flashes at once at a big convention where I had people hold up their flashes. No limit to that kind of line of sight stuff. Radio, different ballgame, but much more advantageous, right? Because I could never have done this shot line of sight, right? Because there's flashes inside the building. Anyone else? Yes? Can I share the budget for those projects? Yes, of course I can not. No, it can get pricey, you know, obviously, because, you know, we live in a world where everything is controlled, right? And the harder and harder thing when you shoot commercially is brand identification. Like, I can't go shoot an ad for somebody in the middle of Times Square because everybody's brands are in the background. I'm getting real good at shooting at f2 and throwing everything out of focus in the background. In this instance, we were good to go because we own those properties. And you know, we paid the permits, we paid that's the beautiful thing about having a wonderful producer. I can't say enough about what you need on a job like this. The first and foremost thing you need is an amazing producer, because when I go to the camera, when Lynn has produced a job, I go to the camera, I look in the lens, I know I don't have to worry about anything else. I gotta worry about the shot. And our team is amazing. Callie is an amazing crew chief. Andrew was astonishing in terms of his versatility. Annie shooting the BTS and all the stuff, the ancillary support stuff. All of that stuff came together, and it's very, very much a team effort. You know, if anything, I slow them down. I'm the anchor on the operation. Anybody else? Yes, sir. My next project, well, I go to LA next week, and then I go home. I've got an author portrait, and then I'm looking forward to going to Cuba in the early part of February. And I'm going to be shooting some dance down in Cuba. Excited about that for sure. All right, the clock is ticking down. One last thing, very quick. No, I did not use the SU-800. The line of sights are, my radio control flashes are set up in manual, generally speaking full power. So I eliminate the pre-flash. So all the other lights are on SU-4 mode, or remote indirect, or remote direct, excuse me, okay? Yep, all right. Sorry, dude. All right, they're giving me that. I'll talk to you over here if you want to. Happy to. Thank you very much for coming by the Nikon booth, folks.